Mark my words. You'll regret this day. I swear it. My mother's voice trembled as the officers forced her into the heavily armored SUV. Little did they know that the creature chained and caged in the back was not just a monster in name. Only I knew the truth. But no one else would believe me. The only other witness, who is still alive, has already asked for a psychiatric evaluation. Maybe I should do the same. My sister has left this world, and now my mother has too. But their departures were not the same. 17 days ago, I noticed something strange about Mom's shadow. It was as if her legs had merged into one undulating column during our sunset walk. The next night, we were all gathered in the dimly lit living room, watching TV. Mom was stroking Andrea's hair as she fell asleep in her lap, when suddenly, her hand stopped. But I saw her shadow's hand cross over Andy's forehead 2 more times. I looked up and saw Mom staring at me, her image flickering like an old film. In one moment I saw her clear emerald eyes, and in the next, I saw yellowed sclera, beige irises, and faded pupils. It was as if I was looking at 2 different women at the same time. A few days later, Andrea was preparing for school when I overheard her ask our mom why she had been hiding in her closet the previous night. I was taken aback. I had no idea what they were talking about. "What are you talking about, baby? I wasn't in your room," Mom replied. "Mom, I saw you. You were peeking your head around the doorframe, but I could see your hair and your eyes," Andrea insisted. Mom responded with a strange suggestion. "Maybe it's time to try a different breakfast cereal to curb weird dreams. I'm thinking Cocoa Puffs." I chuckled at her attempt to brush it off, but something about the exchange seemed off. Mom's laughter was fake, and I could tell. However, she kept smiling and gently caressing Andrea's face. At that moment, it seemed as though Mom knew that I was suspicious of her. From that point on, she barely spoke to me, and when we did exchange words, they were brief and cold. In just a matter of days, I felt like I had lost my mother and gained a resentful roommate. "It's good that you've come back from university for the spring," she said, offering no indication of how she really felt about my return home. "Yeah, thanks for letting me come home for a while, Mom," I replied, feeling uneasy about the situation. "You're welcome," she said, before turning away with her mug of black coffee. A week earlier, Mom had been greeting me with warm hugs and exclamations of, "Oh, I've missed you so much, Lizabug." She used to take her coffee with cream and sugar, but now she drank it black. As her interest in me waned, Mom's obsession with Andrea seemed to grow exponentially. Looking back, I can see that even Andrea was uncomfortable with the situation. But at the time, between the flickering shadows and black coffee, I began to feel like I was losing my grip on reality. I overheard that it kept Andy up past her bedtime to watch disturbing TV shows. By 2:30 a.m., I had reached my limit and decided to check on them. My sister was asleep on the couch, thankfully. However, the mom thing's eyes remained fixated on her, without blinking. As I shifted my weight, a floorboard creaked, and the mom thing's head immediately turned towards me. Its ancient eyes locked onto mine, predatory and unyielding. Despite the sudden movement, the creature remained motionless, and even its blonde bob did not sway. My heart ached, and my gut twisted with worry. I wanted to go to my sister, but something inside me told me it would only put us both in danger. I was exhausted, while the mom thing, with its eons of experience in twisted games, remained relentless. 10 days ago, I offered to take Andy to school while running errands, which made her ecstatic. However, Mom thing glared at me before changing its tone and asking, "Are you sure you don't want to ride the bus like a big girl, Andrea?" "I'm positive. Thanks, Liz. Let's hurry so we don't get stuck behind the bus line," Andy replied, excited to start her day. On this particular occasion, instead of just releasing her and driving off, I decided to park my truck and walk her inside. I kept checking over my shoulder a few times, and she squeezed my hand while whispering, "Thank you." I watched her greet the security officer, swipe her badge, and skip out of sight down the hall. I made my way around the corner and discovered the administration office. A slim young man with glasses greeted me and asked, "Hi, how can I help you?" Hi. Is there a school counselor I could speak to? I'm Andrea Billings' older sister, and I have some concerns. I was hoping someone here could assist us," I said, clearing my throat and looking over my shoulder once again. What kind of concerns? He inquired, furrowing his brows. Safety concerns, I replied. At home. He stood up from his desk and gestured toward a row of plush chairs, saying, I'll get Dr. Juarez. Just a moment, please. As I waited, I heard people laughing together in the direction he disappeared to. They abruptly stopped, and a moment later, I was greeted by a woman whose expression and tone were instantly calming. Before she even spoke, I felt more cared for by this stranger than I had by my mother in weeks. With a graceful wave, she introduced herself. Hi, I'm Dr. Juarez, the Social Resources Director. Would you like to join me in my office? I understand you have some concerns about the home life of Andrea Billings, Eileen asked, her tone gentle but professional. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sure Isaac gave me your name, but it slipped my mind. It's Elizabeth Billings, Andrea's older sister. I just moved home last month, Elizabeth replied. Ah, thank you, Elizabeth. You can call me Eileen. Now, what concerns do you have? Eileen asked, leaning forward slightly. Elizabeth hesitated for a moment before finally speaking up. I know something is wrong with our mother. She's always been very firm about things like sleep and diet. But over the last week or so, she's kept Andy up past midnight watching explicit shows and following up with nothing but Cocoa Puffs for breakfast. In the criminal justice system, sexually based offenses are considered especially heinous. Has felt like a bedtime prayer that is chanted from the next room every hour for the whole night. Every time I've gotten up to check, it's just been staring at Andy, like it's studying her or making some sort of plan. It? Eileen repeated, raising an eyebrow. Oh, I meant to say she, as in my mom, Elizabeth corrected herself. Eileen nodded, her expression sympathetic. I agree that SVU is probably not appropriate for a third grader to be watching, especially not that late at night and before a school day. I can talk to Darla and Andrea about it, but I'm sure this is just a... There's more! Elizabeth interrupted, her voice urgent. She leaned forward in her seat, checking the door as if afraid of being overheard. Dr. Juarez, please listen to me. Our mom has never picked favorites. She has always been consistent and loving to both of us. But since she started obsessing over Andrea, she's been cold and withdrawn from me. I feel silly, or even just plain crazy, but please understand. I think something's wrong with my mom, and that Andrea is her target, or focus, or something. I think she's love-bombing her. Eileen's expression cooled as she processed Elizabeth's words. As in, you think your mother is a narcissist and creating codependency between herself and your sister? Yeah, Elizabeth exhaled, relieved that someone was finally taking her concerns seriously. Something like that. In less than half an hour, Michael, a social worker specializing in child welfare, arrived in our office. I recounted the same story to him, emphasizing the urgency of the situation. Eileen handed me a piece of paper from a file she had previously pulled, but had forgotten about. Michael quickly identified the paper as a safety plan tool and offered to assist us in filling it out. He also assured us that a copy of the completed form would be kept on file with the case. Michael then asked if there was a phone number that could be used to contact us without alerting my mother to the situation. Surprised, I asked if my number was not already on file. Eileen informed us that they only had my mother's number, as she was the only emergency contact for Andrea, and they did not keep any other phone numbers. I was certain that I had been on Andy's in case of emergency, ICE, list at the beginning of the semester, but somehow I had been removed within the last 2 weeks. I wrote down my number at the bottom of the page and handed it back to Eileen for copying. Michael then approached me and stooped down to my level. He emphasized that allegations of this nature were taken very seriously, and that I was not exempt from investigation. I responded with a touch of humor. That's fine with me. The worst dirt you'll find on me is that I failed Geology 101 and got a ticket for going 54 and a 50. The excuse I gave for visiting the library wasn't just an excuse. I really needed to go. As I walked across the polished tiles, the only sound in the room louder than my footsteps was the thumping of my own heart. I briefly considered asking a librarian for help, but the thought of encountering more people after my meeting with Eileen and Michael drained me of any remaining patience. Luckily, the self-service terminal was easy to find and navigate. Once I found the section I needed, a QR code appeared on the screen. I scanned it with my phone and followed the map that popped up in my browser. According to the map, I had to head to the 3rd floor, West Wing, and find the last 2 aisles of shelves before the area transitioned into a study space. As I waited for the elevator to arrive, my heart rate continued to accelerate, and I couldn't help but wonder if my search was even worth it. Doubt crept into my mind. What if I was wrong? Could this all just be a figment of my imagination? I remembered that I had taken time off from school this semester due to my mental health, and that only added to my anxiety. When the elevator finally arrived, I stepped inside and my heart began to pound even harder. Ding! The elevator doors opened, and I hesitated for a moment, my fists clenched tightly. 1,000 thoughts raced through my mind all at once, each one screaming at me. What if this isn't the answer? How could this have even happened? My mom isn't interested in this sort of thing, so why am I even doing this? Despite my doubts, I stepped out of the elevator and continued on my quest. I frantically searched the shelves, my eyes darting over the spines of countless books. My fingers traced the tops of the books, trying to keep my place as I scanned the titles. The False Monarchy of Demons. The Lesser Key of Solomon. As I reached for the next book, a familiar scent filled my nostrils. It was my mother's signature scent, lilac and patchouli. I quickly grabbed the book and rushed back to the elevator. The book was titled, The Infernal Dictionary, Devils, Gods, and Spirits of the Dictionnaire Infernal. I decided it would be safest to read the book in the comfort of my truck, so I checked it out and headed there. As I thumbed through the pages, hoping to catch another whiff of my mother's scent, I couldn't help but feel uneasy about what her method of communication implied. Suddenly, there it was, the unmistakable scent of lilac. My eyes landed on the entry for Lamia in the dictionary. My alarm blared at precisely 2:50, interrupting my thoughts. In just 25 minutes, I had to be at the school to collect Andy. It was crucial to allow for potential traffic and secure a parking spot near the front so Andy could quickly spot me. As I drove, I couldn't shake off the disturbing story of Lamia from my mind. She was just one of Zeus's many mistresses, but her story was particularly tragic. Hera, the rightfully jealous wife, had savagely slaughtered Lamia's children and cursed her by paralyzing her eyelids. From then on, Lamia was forced to witness a world without her beloved babies. It was hard not to think of the similarities between Lamia's fate and my current situation. My mother, or the demon posing as her, had peculiar discoloration around her eyes. I couldn't shake off the feeling that the demon was replacing my mother's beautiful green eyes with its own hideous ones, which had been open for eons due to its eternal insomnia. The pieces started to fall into place as I drove, and it became apparent that this situation was far worse than I had initially thought. Lamia, who had once kidnapped children, had also consumed them. My mind raced as I wondered what my mother demon was capable of doing. As I burst through the elementary school's front doors, a cacophony of voices hit me. Behind the classroom windows, kids were packing up their bags, chattering and giggling. Isaac, the boy I had spoken to earlier, looked up and began to say something. "Hello again. Are you here about... Andrea, I need to pick her up. Right now," I interrupted, urgency lacing my voice. Isaac's eyes widened. "I'm sorry, but your mother just left with her a few minutes ago." My heart dropped. This couldn't be happening. "But I was here earlier today, and spoke with Dr. Juarez and a social worker. They know something's wrong and that Andy isn't safe. How could you let her go with her? Why didn't you protect my sister?" I demanded, my frustration boiling over. Isaac stood up, bringing his hand up in a calming gesture. I clenched my teeth, trying to control my anger and stop myself from punching the window on my way out. My feet pounded against the ground as I sprinted towards the door. Before it swung shut behind me, I heard Isaac yelling for Dr. Juarez. During the drive, all I wanted was a smooth ride home without any interruptions from the law or traffic. However, it seemed that my colleague, Lamia, had already made her plea because I found myself swerving and dodging other drivers to make it through the last two stoplights. As I pulled up to my house, I noticed that the front door was open. Without even thinking, I bolted out of the car, leaving the keys in the ignition and the door ajar. It wasn't until the next day that I realized I had sprained my ankle during the hasty exit. I frantically called out for Andrea, searching every room of the house in a fury, knocking over furniture in my path. In my sister's bedroom, I heard a scream that should never have come from a child. It was a howl of pure agony that seemed to carry the weight of an entire lifetime of suffering. It was the worst sound I had ever heard, until I heard the sickening silence that followed. It lasted just long enough for me to catch the scent of blood before it was broken by a grotesque, wet sound and a groan of satisfaction. I moved forward to investigate, and the space between the dining room and the back den seemed to disappear. Suddenly, I was standing in front of the woman who had raised me, watching as she feasted on a shredded chunk of flesh ripped from where Andrea's head should have connected to her tiny shoulders. Tears streaked down her face as her eyes stared vacantly at the ceiling. In shock and disgust, I found myself muttering a single word: monster. The chair I had knocked over earlier remained where it had fallen for the next 72 hours, as a testament to the horror that had occurred. Lamia turned around slowly, grinning and chewing. She faced me, her eyes glinting with an unsettling mirth. "I know it's quite rude of me to indulge without offering any to you," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "But this is simply too delicious, and I didn't think you would want any." Before I could respond, I launched myself at her. My fists connected with her body as I wailed on the heartless creature who was covered in my sister's blood. Despite my ferocious assault and the strength I exerted, her laughter remained constant and unfaltering. "How could you do this to a child, you sick fuck?" I screamed. Now, Elizabeth," she drawled, her grin widening. I felt a surge of revulsion at the sound of my name on her lips. "That's no way to treat your mother, is it?" Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I had just attacked my own mother, a demon who had taken over her body. Though she wasn't fighting back, I couldn't bring myself to continue my assault. Was it shock? Or was she controlling me with some kind of spell? My fingers relaxed around her neck, despite my desperate attempt to squeeze tighter. Lamia took a step back, her expression shifting to a gentle smile as blood spread through her teeth. Raw, screaming sobs tore through my gritted teeth, and that was the most I could do. My face was hot, wet, and I couldn't escape the taste of salt or the stench of rust. Finally, I gathered the strength to growl out one word. "Lamia!" Her posture hardened as she hissed in response. "What did you just say to me, brat?" Despite the hot dampness that spread down my legs, I squared my shoulders and held my ground. "I said your name, Lamia." Lamia let out a deep sigh, pushing her bloodied hands into her pockets and feigning nonchalance. "Elizabeth," she began, glancing back at the abhorrent scene. "Darla really did a good job with you girls. You're as sharp as a tack, and little Andrea was both sweet and brave. It's a shame things had to turn out like this." Suddenly, the front door slammed against the siding, followed by hurried footsteps and Michael's panicked voice. "Oh shit. You know, I was once just a woman with too much love to give. I was chosen to be a mistress of the god of gods, an honor, I thought. But soon, I was pregnant, lying to my family, and held captive by the wrath of Hera." Lamia's gaze drifted past me, and she could see flashing lights approaching rapidly. She didn't care which of my children were fathered by her husband. She slaughtered each and every one of them in front of me. She stole my light and my ability to fully mourn their loss. "You picked up on my eyes early on, and you've done the necessary research to discover my name," Lamia continued. She reached up and pulled out crumbling orbs from her face, leaving gore and empty sockets in the place of my mother's eyes. "Not surprised, are you? It's glorious to just take them out whenever I please. I highly recommend giving it a try. Nobody ever takes me up on the suggestion, though." She chuckled. I retched, and Michael fainted. As I caught my breath and looked up, Lamia's eyes were back in my mother's face, still surrounded by blood. SWAT officers swarmed the house, shouting orders that were drowned out by a single sickeningly sweet feminine voice. "Do you want to know what I told Hera after she murdered my children? After I decided to spend the rest of eternity stalking good mothers and shredding their souls, just as she had done to me? I warned her that she had created a new goddess of maternal grief, and that any unions she blessed would be subject to my review alongside her own." I stumbled out the door, following the chaos. My mother, who had been evicted and extinguished by the demon, Lamia, writhed in the grips of the armed officers. "After that bitch sent my children to Hades, I told her, 'You will rue this day, I swear it.'